There we go. So, to which I'll say, hello, mate, and let's go. Welcome to Cinema, Life, and Everything. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm all good, man. I'm all good. Excited to chop it up. Yeah, it's been a while since we last caught up as well. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how you are as well, man.
Well, yeah, no, I recently had Charles on, and we were going back through a few of the Birdline memories, and I'm sure we might touch upon them on today as well. But before we get started, would you just like to tell the listeners and the viewers a little bit more about yourself, what you're about, and yeah, that'd be great. Cheers.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, my name's Simeon. Currently living and working in London. So I work in advertising as a creative copywriter. I've been doing that for around like 6 years now. And on the side, it's just basically just like I just enjoy creating things in general. So like for example, How I Met Philip was like working on like a short film that like
Mm.
me and my mates wrote during lockdown. Or like I've got like a part-time side hustle as like a voiceover artist as well. So yeah, just in general, yeah, enjoy creating things. Growing fan of film, definitely not like a film nerd by anything, or like a massive film buff, which is weird because I tried to write one and I've written a second one as well. But yeah, definitely getting more and more into it, and I definitely got like a few favorites which really resonated with me as well.
Disgusting. So what I was going to ask as well is sort of like, yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a fan of this to do it, but do you think like for you, are there like, is it more music or what sort of art style really speaks to you, or is it just a mix of everything really?
I think definitely music is like it's probably like the biggest thing for me. Like just sort of being around it as many people are from like a young age. I think it often dictates what like your parents are into, and then sort of that's your exploration into music as well. I
Mm.
find it really fascinating, especially when it comes down to like lyricism, and this is not just in sort of the genres you expect, but like all kinds of genres, and the stories when people really lean into like that storytelling side and what and how they want to not only just portray themselves, but when they start to like build like worlds like through their albums, and like you can see like a story being built and broken down across like a 1 to 11 or 14 track list. I find it really interesting, and
Sure.
and also the themes as well. Like yeah, but big fan of like concept albums, and I think you can. There's definitely a lot of similarities in like the kind of films I like as well. Well, the ones that really stick with me, and I feel like I enjoy like talking about as well.
Sure. I mean, that's something that because I really picked up on because in the script for the film Birdline, I really got the sense of when he was meeting with the different people. It's okay, a different scene, but also like a different track. The way people were speaking it to each other differed. The amount of people in the conversation, the way, yeah, I really had there was a real like musicality about the language in it. So I don't know. I sort of must have unwittingly picked up on that. So that really does come across in your writing as well, the way you sort of mix the language and the way you pay such attention to the language, not just what's being said, but how it's being said as well. I remember some of the direction you gave me on set. There was a certain type of way you wanted me to say it, and that yeah, that really plays through in your approach. So that's really cool.
No, I love that because that's the kind of thing I'm like aiming for. So like when
There
it
we
comes
go.
through, when you say that, I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's really great to hear. Yeah, definitely. I just love how like strong and influential like language can be, and we sort of see it in like everyday scenarios as well. And yeah, I guess that would have come through in sort of the scripts I wrote for Birdlime, and then also given like your character and how sort of pivotal that was as well. Like I think
Mm,
it's really important, and then the way it's delivered, and I think it was really interesting for me as well, like with because all of the actors we worked with on set were a lot more experienced than I was, and I really loved like giving the that freedom to you guys to say like, this can be delivered a certain way, but at the
yeah.
same time, like if you're understanding like your understanding of the character, like how would you say it, like, and lean into your guys kind of experience as well. And for me, that was really interesting because there's definitely some times where it got tweaked, and it was tweaked like for the better as well, because it just felt, I think it's really important to keep it natural. I think that it makes it a lot more like believable, and you're trying to build this relationship between characters on screen. A lot of you guys hadn't even like met before
No,
we even got on
no.
set. So yeah, you guys absolutely smashed it.
But I just feel that as well. Something you said there to me, which really rings true an audience member and also as a performer as well. Authenticity in
Mm.
music, in film, whatever sort of art thing you choose. if you can write a hit song, but if you get the feeling, the impression that that artist isn't really feeling it, they're just saying words because it sounds cool and it's trying to pull on the emotional strings, it doesn't really resonate. Whereas if someone has really lived it, has really experienced it, or knows what that experience would feel like, it just comes through and it makes it so much more memorable and so much more affecting as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think elements of truth always make things like
Yeah.
a lot more stronger because it's a lot harder to sort of like fake that. And I think it naturally comes across even without whether it's the artist or the director even trying. Like no one knows that truth better than them. So like it's so, you know, it can't always be done, but when it can, and when you can bring a slice of yourself to a
Yes.
script or a song, I think it definitely makes it a lot more poignant. I think it stays in the mind a lot longer.
Exactly. I agree. And it's like you obviously if you want to write about it or act it, you haven't have got to have robbed a bank or to have done it, but you can sort of, as long as you can sort of pare it back to what the motivations would be to have to
Mm,
want to rob someone or how it would feel to do that. All of the feelings of it, guilt, probably exhilaration. I don't know, I've not robbed a bank, fear, whatever. But then you play that into, like you say, when you're writing, you play that into the script or you play that into the song, then people are on that journey with you as well. You're linking to the emotions. And I think it's not only what you were writing, what they said, it's how it was being said as well, the tonality, the rhythm of the language as well. It
yeah.
really sort of affected me that I could understand my character, but reading the whole script and watching the finished piece, that really came across the different rhythms of language and life that was being presented. Felt very true.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it also comes down to it's everything what you said, and especially what you said around like the idea of you don't have to have like had to have done something, but that
Yeah.
comes down to like physicality versus like the connections and like the emotion as well. Like, you know, a lot of, you know, stuff that happens in films, obviously like it's quite extreme. You want to build up like the drama, and not everyone's like done that in real life. But like the dynamics and like the kind of like I said, connections, emotions that you can sort of like bring to that. You can all
Yeah.
like that's probably something that a lot of more people will have a lot more experience of. So when that comes through, it's always been able to again like stand out and add just a lot more like depth and realism to scenes. It's really interesting.
And well, now and talking about depth and realism, you've picked like three incredible films here. So, Simeon, would you like to tell the audience today what your three films are?
Yeah, so first one is Moonlight,
Yeah.
and second one is Whiplash, and then the third
Oof.
one is The Dark Knight.
Well, thank
Uh,
you so much for giving me these three. I got to rewatch these and I had a great time watching them. Where would you like to start, mate?
um, I don't know, man. I guess probably just the order I just said. So we can
Moon-
start with Moonlight if that works.
Wow, the one that absolutely crushed me to watch again, and a lot
Yeah,
of my so much of my like interest around identity, masculinity, the changing of a young boy into an adult. Oof, what a film! What it's one of these silly questions again. I always feel silly when I ask, but why Moonlight?
it's probably like I love like a lot of films, but it's probably one of the few ones that I would have loved to have been able to write because
Mm,
I don't feel like I could have written this. I don't feel like a lot of people could have written this, but like I would have loved to have been able to write a story like that
yeah.
where it's almost like you can. Where do you even start? It's almost like a trilogy within the
Yes.
film. The themes that it touches on, masculinity, specifically like black masculinity as well. Like it's just there's so much around it, and I feel for me it's just one of like those game changer films where
Yeah.
it really like a lot of films want to say okay we want to like break down like perceptions and stuff like that and really start to like change how people view other people as well. And I think this is one of the few films that really does that. And I'm pleased that I've been able to sort of like watch that someone's been able to make that. And yeah, that's I couldn't not pick this film definitely. You said three.
It was one of those ones that when I saw it for the first time, I remember being in a cinema and not being able to move. It felt like I was concussed because it's so unbelievably immersive. But I've always been very proud of this one, that it just doesn't become like misery porn, or it's just not giving into grief. They feel like, which again, going back to authenticity, they feel like fully rounded characters. They have their reasonings, they have their motives for behaving like they do, and they show change throughout the years. Things aren't happening just to move the plot forward. They react as real people would.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And even back what we were saying around like sort of emotion versus like physicality, and there's something really
Mm,
interesting in that the three actors who they got to play Chiron as a young boy, as a teenager, and a
yes.
man. They don't. I was sort of like look because I rewatched it for like this sort of conversation, and then I was looking into like the director and like the way he almost like described it, and he really said that like he didn't wasn't too fussed if they looked like each other. Like they don't
Mm,
necessarily look like each other, but the idea that you can look into so by the end, Chiron or Black, you can look into
yeah.
his eyes and still see little, still see the boy,
Yeah.
and he's still there, even though he's built up this like he's wham by the end. Like he's
Yeah.
obviously he's been to prison, he's built himself up, he's huge. Like he's almost like pretending to be Juan from the start of the film. Like he's almost
Yes.
that character's moved on and he's built that armor for himself to continue protecting himself. But you look into his eyes and you still see that vulnerability, and he's still there, even if he's even as he's like being like harsh towards the people like around him, or like he's acting a certain way. You can still see that vulnerability when you look into the eyes. And I think the three actors, they're almost like three different people.
Yeah.
The characters within the film are basically three different people, and it shows that like just how people change. And there's so many interesting themes here, nature versus nurture, and it starts to sort of like change Chiron as he grows up as well.
I just think the theme of history repeating as well, like you say, like Sharon taking over the role, dealing the drugs and stuff as well. And you think how you can be so against it and so abhorrent to it at the beginning, but by the end, he's almost become that, in trying to get away from it, has almost become what he detested at the beginning. And it's just a really interesting concept. And like I say, very true. A lot of people end up sort of recreating their own sort of like circumstances from their childhood as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. The cycle repeats. That's what they say, isn't it? And it really did with this, and you can see how also like his relationships with everyone throughout the film. And
Yeah.
I love films like this where you can probably tell from like when you read the script for Birdline, but just focusing on one character, and as they bounce around these different
Yes.
characters and those individual relationships and how they go on to affect them. And I love stories like that, and you can just start to see how they're reacting to like that world that's being built, not just by like their environment, which actually looks, the way this film is shot is
I
beautiful,
was
and
gonna,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it makes a rough area never look too like it looks like stunning. Like
Yeah.
the streets are always like sunlit, they're wide open, it doesn't feel close and as congested as kind of what you'd expect for the area. And I think it shows that there's still beauty in those stories, in those areas for people like Chiron as well. And it's just beauty for anyone really. And the world he's in is really just the people around him. So whether it's relationship with his mother, with Juan, who sort of like finds him and acts as that like sort of father figure, mentor for him. For Kevin, like his best friend slash like sort of love interest as well. And I
Yeah.
think yeah, the people build the world around him, and it's really stands out in terms of how you see Chiron develop.
Were you, because both all the, actually in ways a Dark Knight, but especially in Whiplash and Moonlight, I noticed a similarity in the way the camera was almost, I mean, in certain shots, fair enough, but for the most part, being used almost like as a roving eye. So you almost felt like you were standing beside the characters, as it was kept very natural, wasn't framed always to like people walk into the shot. It was more like you're just observing, almost like a documentary style.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and
Yeah.
I'll dip into it later, especially for Whiplash, and yeah, like you said, it also is in the Dark Knight as well. But like when the way the camera is able to put the audience in the scene rather than
Yes.
and this is from like again, I was looking to Chris Nolan and how he made Dark Knight, but rather than like a top-down view of like you're looking in this world, it's like you're actually in this world. So you take those wrong turns, like you end up in that abandoned flat, like little
Yes.
right in the start, and like you're there making those mistakes with them. Yeah, that's like dips into sort of like pure like filmmaking and like how do we really put the audience in here?
And going back to what we said about music and stuff early on and people's passion and that authenticity, do you think that it's because it is like a documentary style, as you're watching it as like a viewer, it gives you that authenticity? I mean, it would fall apart if the script wasn't so excellent and the performances, they didn't feel so natural, but you really start to emote and feel more and feel that connection because it feels so true. It feels like this is really happening to real people, that understanding that before the film started they had a life, and after the film ends certain people will still be going on trying to make trying to make the right choices, trying to improve.
Yeah, 100%. With like the music, I love how they dip into it being like ambient as well. So
Yes.
there's a scene where Chiron, he's just like driving along, and it's like Kid Cudi, and I don't remember the name of the song, but like the chorus goes like "Classic Man," and you can look into the title of that and you read whatever themes you can get out of that as well. The idea of like he's become this idea of classic masculinity, but like the idea that like it just sort of it stops obviously as he gets out the car, and then when he gets back in, it's like it's still playing, and I feel like, but you don't really notice that until he gets back in, starts the car again, and it restarts from where it stopped. And I think just the idea that the music is actually in the world. The same with I think when they shot in the diner, one tune that came up on the jukebox, the director mentioned that it was playing in real life, which apparently is like
Wow.
something you're not meant to do. But they was like, no, we're going to play it in real life. We want the actors to both really feel this scene. And yeah, that's for me the use of ambient audio really dips into that authenticity. It's the same with some of the camera choices as well. Like I think the one
Yeah.
scene when Chiron's older, he's like and someone another dealer gets into his car, like the camera's like fixed on him, and then before you know it, like it when the car door opens, the camera swings out because it's attached to the car door. But you wouldn't
Yeah.
notice it's fixed perfectly, so it's framed on him perfectly, and it swings out. And it's like you something just like thrust into getting into this car with him, and then like I don't know, just these little tricks like that that the director's really his name. Oh, I actually forgotten his name. It's so jarring, but the
That's what I
director.
tried.
The DOP absolutely just killed it with this one. It's like some of the shots, the use of color as well. Um,
Yes, especially
color
in
that
in when he's reminiscing and the flashbacks and stuff like that. Beautifully shot.
yeah, beautiful. And it, like obviously it's based off that play Black Boys Look Blue in the Moonlight, so you can tell like the way they've like used the color blue off like dark black skin and shown that sort of like genuine beauty that comes off that, and obviously speaks to not only just like the name of the film as well, but and even it sort of dips into color theory in that you notice that people who are around him and he feels safe around are often wearing blue or some sort of variation of blue, even like being in the water with Sean right at the start. Whereas in
Yes.
earlier scenes, like his mum is wearing red, or like the bully at the school is wearing red, and it's so simple. It goes all the way back down to like sort of like horror beats as well. Like oh, the person in red is like usually just like the danger or
The
whatever.
danger.
But like yeah, but I think I love that basic use of like sort of binaries. Like this is a safe space. This is a safe world for Chiron, or this isn't a safe world for Chiron as well.
And it's so nice when it's like I say, it doesn't feel jarring. Like if music is used in a certain way or they're lighting stuff where it's become a bit of a stylistic, it's sort of if it feels cliche or if it becomes obvious and it almost takes you out of the film. But I think here it's used so delicately. Like it's not just done for a flashy shot where you see a
Yeah.
car door open and close. Like you say, it's done for a reason and it's not highlighted so it just feels even more immersive. It just adds to the tension and the immersiveness of the film as opposed to taking you out and going, oh, that's a cool camera shot. It's just perfectly done.
Yeah, 100%. I think it really, like I said earlier, it dips people into that world that the director. I just looked up Barry Jenkins. That's his name.
Thank you, thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
I looked up Barry Jenkins. He said like he grew up in that area, so of course that it goes back to what we were saying about authenticity and truth, and he like that's faithful to what he knows and recognizes, and even the playwright who wrote that, they both actually the original playwright and the director both grew up in the same area of I think it's Miami, but they never actually met.
Oh
And
wow.
through like the work, like so the playwright wrote this. This is very much based on his life, and then someone introduced it to Barry Jenkins, and they sort of like connected, and Barry Jenkins then went on to sort of bring that to the screen as well. So really, really faithful dip into the world of that.
It's yeah, like I say, thank you so much. It's one of those films that I remember watching it the first time, and it was a pleasure to rewatch. Do you have a favourite scene about it at all? I know that's tricky because it's hard to pull apart an individual scene, but is there anything in particular that leaps out at you?
Yeah, for me, definitely just the swimming scene. Like there's
Yeah,
so much around. It doesn't like it's interesting because you see like Black when he's older, Chiron, and
yeah,
he's clearly like trying to emulate one, and
yeah,
you watch him and think, oh, he's been shown to act that way, but really. One is never shown. Like you never see him like driving along with Little in the car or anything while he's like drugged in. It doesn't even bring him into that world. He shows him, look, I'm going to teach you like how to swim. I'm going to like like generally just not. He's not trying to have Little emulate him at all. And
yeah,
like the safety in that scene, like the fact that they can both like get in the water, teach him how to swim, like let him know that okay, like I'm like supporting you. You can for someone like literally just jumping into the water, you're thinking, oh shit, I'm going to drown, but like knowing that someone's there to catch you, and then again like the ongoing themes of he becomes that person to catch himself. I think this women's scene is definitely the standout, probably for a lot of people, I'd imagine,
yeah,
especially considering like Black people and like our historical relationship with the water as well. To know that
yeah,
like they actually sort of, and even in one scene you see like a bunch of kids playing in the water, and I think it speaks to that the idea of what's known and like expected, I guess, like in terms of masculinity, and then sort of
mm,
owning that in a different way. For me, that's one way how I interpreted it. But the fact that Chiron can go into a space that like he's probably not like familiar with, like the open water, to have someone there to sort of guide him through that. It speaks to his sort of journey of like you can go into that space of masculinity, you expect to go a
yeah.
certain way, but then you feel comfortable in what you're not used to. I think is really interesting. So that scene always stands out for me.
That's a gorgeous way of looking at it. No, fantastic. So, where would you like to go next? Would you like to go to Whiplash or would you like to go to The Dark Knight?
It probably links next to go to Whiplash. To be fair, I think Whiplash is that's something I watched more recently,
Oh,
literally the other day, and like not watched it for a while, but it's just it's insane, man. Like what
whoa. Damien Chazelle at the top of his level.
yeah,
Again, masculinity to a degree, obsession,
yeah,
music
yeah,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a theme running through.
So I mean, yeah, why Whiplash?
I think it centers around this like abusive relationship, which is like a horrible
Mm,
way to pick why you want to watch a film. But
yeah.
at the same time, like there's so many like different beats to it, and even just like the way it's shot and the way
Yeah.
it portrays music in the film, I find really interesting. And also the viewer's perspective on like what they're hearing versus what Fletcher and Neiman are hearing is really interesting
Yes.
because like because even though like we're hearing Neiman play the drums and we're hearing this jazz band, and to us like all of it sounds beautiful. Like there's probably nothing in the film where the average person could go like this actually sounds like shit. It all sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, with Fletcher, like he's hearing something that he's not happy with, which is
Yeah.
that drive for perfection. And the same with the others. Like you can tell they recognize it because it's interesting. Like again, I was looking into sort of like the director interviews, and they got real musicians to play the rest of the band. So they're not even actors; they're just like real musicians. So they kind of like reacting in real time. But it's almost like a second language. Like we can hear it, but we can't hear what they're hearing. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at Fletcher be abusive to Neiman, and I'm thinking like he's playing it fine. Like I don't understand what the issue is here, but like we almost like we don't we there's that barrier, and the film never tries to break it down and explain it. It's never like, oh, this tempo doesn't sound like this because of this. It doesn't try and break it down and bring the audience into it. We're kept back. Like we're not meant to get why he's being so harsh, but it's like, and I think that draws the focus really neatly towards the idea of like ambition and greatness and taking it beyond what the average person understands. And you see that from the audience's perspective and also like the bystanders in the film as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that obsessive search for perfection and what you have to sacrifice, which is essentially everything to achieve that level of mastery. And
Mm.
I love the ending as well. If you haven't seen it, sorry, spoilers. But whether some people consider it like, oh, it's a happy ending because he achieves it, but in a
Oh hell
way,
no! No, no, no,
no,
no,
he's
no.
left his father behind and he's just destroyed everything to achieve it. It's terrifying. It's a horror film. It's Fight Club with drums.
It is. It really is. Like it's funny to describe that as well because like it's shot like a sports film, isn't it? Pretty much
Yes.
like it's cross between like a sports film, like a pro sports film. You're trying to make it. You see his literal blood, sweat, and tears, and
Yeah.
then also some of like the horror beats, the thriller beats that come into it as well. Like when Fletcher's character literally just like throws a stool at him out of nowhere, and you're
Yeah.
thinking, oh, it's going well, like, and he's being really nice up until then, and it's like there's this constant sense of tension that you just never know when he's gonna flip. And that like J.K. Simmons, like
Oh,
absolutely Jesus Christ, man, that's like in his generational performance, like
yeah.
he's terrifying. He's actually like he clearly makes the audience scared. Like it's just funny seeing the rest of the band's reaction. Like Andrew's, it's funny because Andrew like Neiman could like walk away at any time, and he just doesn't.
Yeah.
Like there's
No.
nothing stopping him from like going to a different school, but he knows I want to be great. I want to like impress this person. So I'm gonna like stick with it. But yeah, the constant sense of tension is really what makes it.
And the thing that always sticks to me as well is they never, like you say, they never explain about the music stylings and stuff that you just know that he's doing it wrong. Whatever he's doing wrong. But also the original drummer as well, and the accident. I'm doing speech marks here, with my
Yeah,
fingers. The accident he had, and was it an accident? No, did it
yeah,
make
yeah.
him commit suicide and stuff? You know, there's some really sort of like bits going on there. Like how hard does he drive people? But in a way he's welcoming being driven that much. He wants to sacrifice himself to become the best drummer of all time, which is just like mad.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, and even like the way it's shot, like it's typical like moody, like sort of small like American like town, like sort of like coming of age like underdog film. Like it
Yes.
quickly gets into those beats in the beginning. Like you've got this like drummer, he's seen by like the main guy, and he finally gets a shot, and he's finally into the band, and then he asks out the girl, and the girl says yes, and it's all going into that, and it very just quickly like deteriorates. He literally has like no friends in the film, in the band. Like it's
Yeah, it's
this
true.
atmosphere that Fletcher has built. Like he's got no friends. He like this basically just very probably in his eyes like quite practically, but like quite harshly just dismisses his love interest. I can't remember her name, but like he's like, look, I want to be great. You're going to stop me from doing this. I can see what's going to happen. Like we need to just like lock this off right now. And he essentially just gives in, just gives in and descends into that sort of like war, that kind of madness that like
Yeah.
Fletcher's set up, because it's clear that Fletcher's seen some kind of talent in him and he's trying to draw it out. And it's almost like psychological warfare, pretty much. And the way it's shot is very like
Yeah.
psychological as well. Like with Andrew like misplacing the folder, like to us, like he looks like he just left it there and it went missing. And it's like, did he actually misplace it? Is he just like lying, or like did like Fletcher come along and take the folder? We don't see what. There's no clear way to show what
Mm.
happens in that folder, and that's how he gets his shot. But it's like it's a bit of an unreliable narrator because we're
Yes.
not actually seeing like what's happened there. And I've found that the fact they left that unanswered is really interesting.
It's like I say, it's got so many layers to it as well. That documentary style again, the way it's filmed, that you very much feel in the room the whole time, and just that palpable sense of unease, and like as you mentioned as well, going towards a traditional hero's journey of meets the challenge, beats the challenge, gets the girl,
Yeah.
reunites with his family,
Mm.
succeeds, cheering crowds. The crowd's cheering, but that's really just about the only thing that makes it through at the end. All right, he's finally got the adoration of the teacher, and to a degree, for how long? Probably till only the next performance, and the crowd liking it. But that's the thing. Even the where it ends, it's like it's ended, but how long is that joy going to be felt for before now you've got to get to the next level?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And like even that end performance is so interesting because there's only a few parts of it. It's the only time where he looks like he's enjoying himself drumming. Like
Yes.
every other performance, he never looks like he's enjoying himself. And the music, which is like something so like joyful and like like expression, it sucks out of that. Like for
Yeah.
this film, it's very like regimented. Like there's there's so many great one-liners in this film, and one of them was at the dinner table scene where like Andrew's is describing, oh, like, you know, we've got a competition for the bands, and his cousin's like, well, how do you decide who's the best band? Is it subjective? And he's like, no, like music's not subjective, but like, of course, like everyone knows music is
Yeah,
music is, the way they see it is like, no, there's perfection and there's nothing else. And I think the way it like describes the way music is portrayed in this film and where we hear it is quite like harsh. Like a song is rarely allowed to go into full swing. It's always being cut. It's always being stopped. Like we never know when it's going to be cut or stopped. And it definitely it's seen through Fletcher's vision of what music should be. It's like perfection. It just doesn't play. That it's not even worth playing. And I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, the end scene is the only one where he looks like he's kind of enjoying himself and like obviously and like for parts of it until we get to the end, and then when he's not against Fletcher and Fletcher's bringing him through towards the end, then like his face it changes and he's not enjoying himself so much anymore. So he's like, I need to nail this.
Yes.
And it shows that relationship with what point does passion become obsession?
Yeah, I agree entirely. And the thing, like the audience's reaction are very rarely shown. And even at the end, it's done with a big band feel, with the big cuts and stuff like that as well. It's still, like you say, you can see him suffering. You can see the sweat. You can see the relentlessness of trying to keep the drum beat going and bringing it down and bringing it back up again higher than you think he can. And will he be able to maintain? So even in these moments, it should be joy. He's succeeding. He's winning, so to speak. There's still this fear that Fletcher's going to switch on him and it's all going to go wrong again.
Yeah, literally. And yeah, Fletcher himself, like you can tell that they had fun like writing his characters. Like some of the lines he comes out with, I think it actually you start to see a bit of that in Neiman as well, because I think Fletcher, he said something like Andrew starts crying. He's like, oh, what, you one of those single tier people? I'm like you can tell like they've just had so much fun with writing it, and then at the dinner table scene, like Andrew is just like cutting into his cousins, saying like, oh, the NFL is never going to call you, like he's being so harsh and brutal, and it's like he's not actually that much of a likable character.
No,
and it makes you think, he's like a month into the band at this point. It's like, is like Fletcher starting to rub off on him? Like, is that cycle of like being like consistently harsh unless you're perfect going to like continue with Andrew as well? Because you can really start to see like Fletcher's character come through Andrew as well.
And once again, going back to authenticity, the director himself was actually a jazz drummer, so it makes you wonder how much he's coming from his own experiences as well.
Yeah, literally.
Sorry,
go on.
No, go please, go on.
I was going to say, yeah, he said his own like jazz, his own teacher was like that, like influence, but he just told J.K. Simmons to just dial it up times 10. Like it has to be just like, you're an absolute piece of shit. Sorry, language.
No, it's fine. I was going to say, do you have a favourite scene from Whiplash at all? I know this is tough.
Probably any scene Fletcher's in, but if I had to nail it down, probably the scene where like he steps in, he's clearly got this bad news. He plays this tribute to his former student.
Yeah,
and like you see this different side to him. Like Simmons does a great job of showing a different side to the character. We see this different side where he's very like solemn, like, you know, he clearly had like a good relationship with the student. And then it like later on in the film, that scene gets even more powerful because you realize he was lying the whole fucking time. And like him suicide. It wasn't a car accident. But then when that scene transitions to like that, he's like testing the three drummers, saying like, none of you can get to the fucking tempo. We're gonna stay here until we get to that tempo. And like they're just like switching between the two, so you can see like Andrew at first, I think one of the other drummers, Tanner, he goes on, he messes it up. You can see Andrew smiling like when Fletcher lays into him, and he's like, oh, okay, this is going to be my chance. And he gets on, and Fletcher tees him up. And you think, oh, maybe this is going to be the moment where he proves himself. And then he says, like, is this going to be it? Is this going to be where you finally earn that part? He drums for about 3 seconds, and Fletcher tells him to get off. Like, it really just sets him. And they constantly rotating between the three. You can see like the other two are being like dragged down to this level of hell, and even like the reaction of the other students, if they're just milling about, and they can hear like the shouting in the background. They're just used to it. Like they're just there drinking a coffee in the bathroom. They can hear Fletcher laying into those three drummers, And then finally, like Andrew gets it, and it's not even a sense of triumph because he's like, right, now we can start practice. You've got the part. Now you've got to like do practice again, and then they bring everyone back in, and yeah, the way it just changes from him being solemn to him being brutal is just like such good acting, and even yeah, just like the camera work, like we mentioned earlier, like it kind of feels like you're in the scene, you're hanging over the drummers, like
Yeah.
you're never really allowed to sort of like take a step back. You're kind of uncomfortably close, like the camera dips in uncomfortably to expressions of the
See the
characters so
sweat
many
and
times.
yeah, the blood and everything. Exactly. It really does sort of, you realize like the abuse that the body and mind is taking in every one of those scenes for something that, like you say, should be so joyful and pure. The love it, like the enjoyment it's giving, how much the artist is having to suffer to
Yeah,
give that agency.
yeah, it's painful. Like they literally managed to make music painful. Like, and it's interesting that like I think they probably could have done it with a few instruments, but it's really good they did it with a drummer because like they in a lot of films they're like the sideman. The drummer really
Yeah,
never really focus, but without like the drummer, like the whole band, like they just can't play. Like that's probably the most important person.
it's the
They
heartbeat.
can't. There's no in, especially in like that sort of jazz ensemble which they show in the film as well. Like there's only one drummer, so like you can't just let some like with the saxophonist, for example. There's like two, so if one of you misses a note, the other one can catch it. It's one drummer, and if you're off, you're off. And it's I think it's they managed to just make it look so like yeah like violent, obviously with like the blood, the sweat and the tears on the kit as I mentioned earlier. It just looks like a fight, like they're literally having like a fight to try and like keep up to his tempo, which again the audience can't hear, the camera can't keep up with. By the end scene it's like just flipping between like the sort of the
Yes.
different scenes of the kit is being, and like it just shows that we're literally just like hearing this other language.
It's a crazy. Well, thank you so much. So we've just covered Whiplash there, so it brings us very nicely into the third and final film. The if you stay long enough, what being the hero, you end up becoming the villain. The absolutely extraordinary Dark Knight. So why the Dark Knight then?
Yeah, I think for me, like I'm like I like super films. Like I think as a genre, like it's clearly having like it's sort of like well, sort of coming to the end of its heyday now. And I think
Mm,
for me, they were at their best when they emulated another genre. So at the
yes.
moment, I feel like a lot of the films that come out, they're just leaning, they're too far into their sort of like cinematic universes, and they're sort of referring back off themselves. Whereas a lot of the first releases for the initial films, you look at, for example, like Man of Steel when it came out, that was like a first close encounter of the third kind of like
Yeah.
alien kind of film. Even films like Thor, then into like sort of like sci-fi, like Ant-Man was like prime for that, and they were like really good first entries. And I
Yes.
feel the Dark Knight was probably one of the first ones. Like I could be wrong, but one of the first ones to do that. In that it wasn't. It was. I think Nolan described it as like an extraordinary character in an ordinary world, and they kind
Yes.
of wrote it. They wrote it as a crime thriller. And yeah, for me, like that's like when comic book films are at their best, when they're drawing into those other elements and not trying to take it. Obviously, it takes itself seriously, but it's not like bound. Like okay, this has to be like a sort of like a comic book world. Like it's more of like a sense of this. Like I said, extraordinary characters in this ordinary world. How would the world react to them? Like how could we give them a threat that feels credible, feels like it could really happen as well?
I completely, and I think Gotham and Batman has always led to that, like because he is just human. He's just a very rich person that has bought the gadgets that help him fight crime. But there's always that sense of the big problem for me in superhero films a lot of the time is the lack of stakes. If a
Yeah.
Superman, I love Superman as a character, but he's only as good and as vulnerable, all right, Kryptonite. But he's really about the people around him that he can't always save. So he's only
Mm.
as vulnerable as his friends. Whereas Batman, you do get that sense of risk about him that, all right, he can keep on going, but that's the only thing he really has going for him. He could die. Even though
Yeah.
it's Batman, and I've always respected that. And I thought this one, especially, it really struck me as almost like it felt a lot like the film Heat, that like the bank
Mm.
heist film, but at the same time, having these sort of crazy characters in it, but did still very rooted in like in the everyday world. And you talk about cinematic and film choices and character choices, clothing, color choices, and everything in this incredible. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Nolan leaves nothing to chance.
100%. And even talking around like that sense of like risk and stakes, it's really one of the main things I really find this film is always like stayed with me is the fact that like Batman, well, Bruce Wayne or whatever, he can't always like beat his problems up. Like he
No.
can't like there's sort of the risk that he's facing. Like fair enough, he can probably like like beat up the Joker or whatever. But like what the Joker's trying to do in terms of like instill that sense of it dips into the themes of like anarchy and chaos and not and upsetting the established order as he sort of like puts in the film. You can't always beat that up. Like if he's trying to like convince people to sort of like act that way, and it's like
Yeah.
no, it's like showing like okay, no, there's like a better way to go about this. You can see how like the Joker like tries to corrupt like Harvey Dent, obviously successfully. Like he takes the best out of Dent, Gordon, and Batman, and says, "Okay, I'm going to break you and show that you can bring people down to our level." And
Yeah.
just for whatever reason, it's not fully explained why he wants to do that, but he is like doing that. And I think it's interesting because like Batman has like his all the gadgets, like he can beat anyone up, but like that sense of like ideological change can't always be easily dealt with.
And I love the fact they played with like so many dualities in there. So you obviously have Harvey Dent, he becomes a split personality, but the Joker almost becoming like the other side of Batman. He's
Yeah,
Batman, but if Batman chose the dark path instead, and a lovely choice that Heath Ledger made, and he made so many lovely choices. But they never really explained Joker's backstory, which is something that's
mm,
scary in keeping with the comic book as well, because that's what something that is truly scary. That this you never really understand this man's motivations completely. It's just that he's just I wouldn't even say he's crazy, he's just very sadistic. He understands, I think he has justification in what he does, he just never chooses to reveal it.
yeah. Those characters like that three you mentioned, the Joker and like Harvey Dent or Two Face. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like, I like to see them as like two different reflections of like Batman himself because it's
Yes.
just like when like we see this film like it's one of the few times where we see like Bruce actively not want to be like Batman. Like he's like trying to almost like retire, and he says, "Okay, Harvey Dent can do what like I can do. So I
Yeah.
want to like sort of just live out in the open. Like I want to be with like the woman I love." And he kind of wants Harvey Dent's life essentially. So there's that side to it of like who Harvey Dent is like initially. Batman's like, I'd love to be able to like do that and be out in the open and sort of like make a difference, not just having to wear like a cape and a mask and the idea that like again he's created something bigger than him, and that leads into how, like you say, the Joker's also a reflection of him because by the end he doesn't really care that he gets arrested. Like he gets arrested several times. He doesn't really care like that he gets caught or anything. He's trying to like you kind of get the impression he believes society needs like a set of beliefs like
Yeah.
rather and a symbol rather than being like the figurehead. So whether he's in prison or not, it's actually funny because in the first film, kind of what he wants actually happens. Like it all descends into chaos, really. But like
Yeah.
he like similar to Batman, they're both like, no, let's have like it's people need like some sort of like symbol or like sort of their own kind of like beliefs to go through rather than just going through like one particular like person and being like, okay, it should just be me. Like it's like they're kind of saying it's a bit like bigger than them both. And you do see again, like you said, if Batman took like that sort of anarchic dark path, would it end something similar to the Joker because they're trying to achieve similar things really? And then
Yeah.
you see, and then you see like Batman take his approach by the end of the film because like he's like, look, paint me as the villain. I can do that because you can keep up appearances over here, essentially, and
Mm.
like, do what needs to be done for the city. So it's like again, it's not around people don't need to think Batman's a good guy. They need something to believe in, and that should be Harvey Dent, essentially.
And do you feel that you chose this one outside of maybe Batman Begins or another superhero genre because of those stakes? Because it did have that authentic feel about it, that there are some fantastical characters, but it's nothing like the Joel Schumacher version of Batman with
Yeah,
Batman and Robin. It does still feel very grounded. Like when people, like obviously the famous bit where Joker slams that guy's head onto the pencil at the beginning, people really die. You know, there are
yeah.
real like spoilers again. Rachel dies in it. So there are real implications to what's going on here. I think that really helped this film, that you people don't just get up and brush themselves up. It's not all about the Adam West blam and pow. There are really like real like consequences to decisions here.
Yeah, 100%. I think why this one always stands out to me, not just within the trilogy, but like all the kind of like Batman films, even like some of the newer ones, is that like the threat is more than just like physical. So even like in The Dark Knight Rises, like there's still that like sort of ideological of society should just like fall in on itself and whatever. But the threat from Bane is like quite physical, like, and that's
Yeah.
established sort of halfway through the film. Like he literally breaks his back. That's fine. But like with the threat in the second film, it's leaning a lot more towards like the ideological, like
Yeah.
so many. I think it's Nolan's brother Jonathan Nolan who wrote it, but there's so many good lines in this film. Like, and one of them really stands out. It's like, can you like, or that sort of question of can you be a decent man in an indecent time? And it's like
Yes.
everything's trying to like drag you down to that level. Do you need, you know, like, can you still like step above and still be what like your sort of city or your people or whoever needs you to be? I think the film dips into so many of those kind of like themes of like we say anarchy, of like justice, of like crime, of like morality, like the idea of right and wrong. Like it dips into all of those. And I think for me that's what stands out. A lot of the Batman films do like the physical side of it really well, and this for me stands head and shoulders above the rest in terms of like the other sides to it. They're really sort of like, I keep saying ideological, but I can't think of a better
No,
word. But
no,
yeah,
no,
that
you're right. And the idea of free will as well. Like, truly, are you making your own choices, or are you always being sort of like cajoled by the Joker or the devil on your shoulder to make the choice that you think is the right choice, but it's actually, it only feels right in that second. How you sort of can radicalize people. It's so pertinent. It's still so true to today's like society as well. So many of the themes brushed upon. And I mean, that's another good reason for this film, I dared say as well, that it feels timeless, even though it's of its time. At the same point, some of the themes it's touching upon are just so relevant for today as well.
Yeah, 100%, and especially like with what the Joker's arguing, because he's, even though like it's horrific, like he's not wrong. Like the stuff
No,
he says around like chaos is fair, and the scenario gives like you blow up a truckload of soldiers, like it's all part of the plan, so it's fine. But like you like sort of kill like a judge or whatever, and everyone like loses. Like it's true. Like the
yes,
idea of like chaos is like fair. He portrays himself as like this agent of like chaos, and a lot of the stuff he's saying, like by the end, he still thinks he's won, because he's set like Two-Face on this path and like tried to fuck up his sort of mess up his public image,
yeah, yeah,
and yeah, I think that's what makes it like sort of like timeless. Like it's always great when like the villain isn't just like one dimensional, and he's
100%.
clearly far from that, and the idea that like, you know, he's not necessarily wrong. Like it's morally it's wrong, but like, you know, the idea of like truth, and can like people argue and say like, no, you're actually, you know, wrong about people here, because in the end, like they don't really win. Like they have to sort of make the sacrifice to, like, the good guys don't win. Sorry, they don't have to make the sacrifice to try and keep that order, so it doesn't all descend into madness. Like, so they kind of, you know, he wins by the end. The Joker wins by the end, really.
Yeah, very, and of course, Heath Ledger's iconic. I mean, everybody in that film: Michael Caine, Bale, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Aaron. Why have I forgotten his name? The Two-Face. Why have I completely?
Oh, it's Urquhart or
That's it, Aaron
Simon.
Eckhart. Aaron Eckhart. Yeah, everyone's like swinging at the top of their like levels here, but Heath Ledger with his one of his last performances, and just absolutely astonishing depth and just ability in that character as well, just completely iconic.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows like the story of like, you know, how he really delved into his character, got into his method acting, and that's
Mm,
been like sort of well like documented as well. But one thing that was stand out to me as I was watching it again the other day, is that he's actually like funny, which is weird
yes,
because like for a character around the theme of the Joker, like he's not always funny. Sometimes he's just doing like random stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, he's laughing, but like it's a funny that like no one else really gets. But he's actually like some of like the delivery as well. I think there's a few things that stand out. Like even just the scene, like the car chase scene, where he pulls out like, was it a pistol at first, and
yeah,
then it's like a shotgun or whatever, and he keeps handing out more like ridiculous weapons, and then literally ends up with like a flipping bazooka.
yeah,
He
yeah,
just like pulls it out, and it's just like the way. Obviously, of course, it's down to the way it's shot, but like the delivery as well. I think there's another line when he walks into the meeting of like all the sort of the gangbangers, and he's like, someone asked him, "What do you think you can just steal from us and walk away?" And he's like, "Yeah." Like,
Yeah, he's
it's
just
just
so deadpan. Yeah.
yeah. It's like he's actually a funny character, and again, there's layers there. Like, even though you never really see him be open up and be vulnerable, like he's still so engaging. Like,
Yeah.
just so, like, even just how like clinical he is. Like, he comes across like he doesn't know what he's gonna do like the day he wakes up. But like, you see the clinicality in, like, for example, when the bus pulls out of the bank robbery and it lines up with all the school kids going away, and you see the police cars drive past, and like it's all like meticulously timed, or even like the facts with the pencil scene, he's able to get that in someone's eye, like
Yeah.
clearly, like sharply as well. Like, so obviously he knows how to fight, and it's like that clinicality versus like that sort of, like, he literally like walks around just looking disheveled, is just yeah, such a tragedy. But like that that performance was just like insane. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's one of the few. I think it's one of the few like Oscar awarded comic book performances. I may have
Yeah.
made that up. Something
No,
along
no,
those lines.
you're right. No, and yeah, it's perfect. I mean, this is going to be a tricky one, but do you have a favorite scene from The Dark Knight at all?
Yeah, I do actually. I think for me, it's probably the scene where he's like, "I want my phone call." So like, he's just been arrested. He's just been arrested, and he's like, "I'm in jail. Like, I want my phone call." And like, this is just after the interrogation scene. So Batman set off to go save Rachel. Like, Gordon set off to go save Harvey Dent as well, and he's just
Yes.
sat there in the cell. And the way Nolan does this, like, I think it's one of the best sort of like techniques in like cinema, is like the way he transitions between different conversations. So it's like three different
Yes.
conversations at once, and he just like dips into one, and then it dips into the next one, and then it dips into the next scene. So like it just builds tension instantly. Like, you see it in Oppenheimer, like, so again, tangent here, but you see it in like Oppenheimer,
Love
where like a lot of it is literally just like conversations. They're standing around and they're talking in like lecture halls or whatever. But like, he builds tension because he just dips between the two, and the certain lines that he cuts off from is what like leads you to think, okay, what's next? Like, what they're going to say next, and then it's like you're thrust away from that into this other thing. I've got to catch up with this, and then like for me, like the way he does that, the scene where like Joker's goading the police officer, and he's like, and he literally said, like, you can tell like he wants to, like, he knows he needs to get the police officer to engage for him to
Yeah.
escape, and you can tell how quickly he gets in. He just messes with the officer's head, like gets into his mind. It's like, how many of your friends did I kill? Like,
Yeah.
in their last words, I probably know them better than you. And I think he's like, when the guy answers, even just like the acting from Ledger, but when the guy answers, he's like, literally just says like, "Oh, you killed 6 of my friends," and the Joker doesn't even say anything. He just mouths like 6 is like, "Oh shit, I killed 6." It's like the small touches from there, and then it just cuts, and it's like you're waiting to see what happens next. You're waiting to see like the officer engage, and it just cuts from that, transitions to the next one as well, and then you've got the guy complaining with the phone in his stomach, saying like, "Oh, like it's lighting up," and everyone's like, "Oh," like everyone's like, "Is that like a cell phone, whatever that?" And then it cuts, and it goes to the I think there's even 4 scenes in this. Like, it's like Harvey and Rachel trying to talk to each other, and you can tell Harvey just like lying to try and like make her like feel better. And
Yeah.
they're both sort of like where they are, and like that tension's obviously like building. And for me, that's just like the best scene, because like it speaks. It's like some of the best of Nolan, and that twist at the end where he's sent them the wrong way, because clearly
Yes.
he knows that like, oh, Batman's clearly going to go after Rachel. Batman's faster. He's going to go there first. So I'm going to get to Batman. Like to really get to him, I'm going to send him the wrong way to Dent. Batman knows, oh, I've got to save Dent now, and like
Yeah.
he knows, and Rachel's probably dead because the police officers aren't going to get there in time.
Oh,
Yeah, I know like that the interrogation from the scene before really stands out, but that
yeah.
sort of like multi transition between those 3 or 4 scenes is just perfection. And then ends with like the Joker like standing there as everything explodes around him, and then he's there in the car, like, being driven away, like that
Yeah.
sort of famous scene. He's leaning out the
Ridgewood.
window, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally it's perfect, man, perfect.
I don't think that's any accident as well. And I think in you saying that and the jumping between the conversations, again, almost bringing it full circle at the beginning. I see this in Moonlight as well. I see it in Whiplash. Yeah, there's some amazing, beautiful camera choices made, but it is the musicality of the language, the fact the scenes are so grounded in that
Mm.
back and forth of the dialogue. And I think maybe that's why it resonates with you as a scriptwriter as well. You can
Yeah.
recognize his and that authenticity and that emotional content brings something to you as a viewer as well.
Yeah, 100%. The dialogue in this film is like literally pitch perfect.
Incredible.
And that's just down to, like you say, he left no stone unturned with like the characters and how they'd react to different things. And yeah, for me, it's up there as well. It's definitely one of my favorites, and I'm glad it's like almost gone past that limits of, oh, it's just a superhero film. And it's like
Yes.
people say that in conversations, they're like, okay, yeah, I can see why that, even with like sort of like film, like aficionados, like film lovers, if you say, oh, The Dark Knight's one of my favorites, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see why that is. Well, that's just my opinion anyway, but I feel like it's definitely up there.
I think it's not just, I think you said it perfectly. It's not an excellent superhero film. It's an excellent film that happens to
Mm.
have superheroes in it. That is, it's almost that they just exist in it. Well, listen, mate, thank you so much. Three amazing films, three really good insights into them as well, and why they mean so much to you and why you do what you do creatively as well. Just before we leave now, though, is there anywhere where people can follow you, look at your work? And I'll put this in the show notes as well.
I think like the main thing is like just the short film
Yeah,
that we both worked on. I'd love to sort of direct people there. So it's on YouTube. You type in like sort of Birdlime short film.
yeah,
It'll come up, and it's only like around like sort of 30 minutes. But I think that's a piece of work I'm really proud of. And yeah, for me, I feel like that's something I'd love to sort of direct people
put
to.
out there.
Probably find me on Instagram, on Twitter, just on the like Simeon Jarrett, or Simeon X Jarrett, actually one of the two. But yeah, I think the main thing is the only thing I plug is a short film, really.
Brilliant. Well, I'll stick them in the show notes as well. Listen, mate, time is precious. So thank you for sharing it with me today. I've loved this conversation and I look forward to seeing you in person soon as well, mate.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah, cheers for having me on as well, man. Thank you.
Lovely. Take care. All the best, yeah?
Cheers, and yourself. Bye.
Bye, mate.